Hi, today's efforts are around creating or making a new crystal for a dial indicator. I've got this decent quality batty, I guess that's how you pronounce it, indicator. It's made in England. And the crystal on it's gone. You can buy crystals from eBay for a couple of bucks, but when they get up to be this size, they're not available. The crystals that you buy, of course, are intended for watches, and even pocket watches don't quite get this big, so it can be hard to find a crystal for this sort of tool. So what I've done is made some tooling to affect this. This piece here gets held in a lathe chuck, collet chuck, and then I sandwich in a piece of rubber. I sandwich in a piece of I believe it's acrylic. It's a 20 thou thick. Comes in a package called Craft Plastic. This is the stuff here. Craft Plastic, 20 thou thick, 500 micron. This is from Amazon. 20 thou was about the right thickness from measuring another crystal. So what happens here is this piece here gets mounted in the headstock. Here's the crystal, which is about 20 thou thick. I believe it's acrylic. Another piece of rubber, and then a tailstock piece. That all gets sandwiched, and the plastic is turned to the right diameter. Now the tailstock piece originally just had a duplicate of that went in the tailstock. The problem with it was I have to have a fair bit of pressure between these two plates, and things were starting to get hot with the dead tailstock center. So I made what is in essence a little live center. That's if you can see down into there, that's a cheapo thrust bearing in the bottom. There's this little shaft, which is essentially got a couple of small bearings on it with a center hole drilled in it. That goes in like so. So I have a way to press on this and have it easily rotate. A couple of shots showing the components that go into the rotating center. There is a shaft, if I could call it that, with a center drill in the end to take the tailstock center, and on it are mounted two deep groove ball bearings. This is done via a light press fit. And then, if I could call it the pressure plate, which presses up against the work, has in the bottom of it a thrust bearing installed, and then the shaft with the pressed on bearings fits over top of that. When this is done, we want it to kind of dome up a bit, so that we want to have a little bit of upwards pressure. If you don't have enough upwards pressure, it'll pop in and out. If you have too much, you can see there you can get a kink or a bend when you try to put the crystal in. So how this all comes together is fairly straightforward. The live piece, or the rotating piece that rotates with the headstock, is put in a collet. I'm using my body to press the lever action tailstock into positions, and that kind of gives me a third hand. Now I have to true things up, obviously. Use this file, whatever's handiest and thin, to press these pieces into a little better alignment. Still too much pressure. I'm trying to reduce the pressure here so that I've got enough to hold it in place, but that I can still move it. And that rubber is so sticky, which we want. It's a slight challenge to be able to get there. But I'm just sort of eyeballing the tool post here. Sorry, eyeballing the tool against the black magic marker line. So I'm now a reasonable distance away, fairly close to being in concentric with the black circle that I've drawn here. So let's give this a turn here. When you look at that, it looks really eccentric, but it's really just the rubber piece that's eccentric. The black line drawn on the plastic is running fairly true. Obviously, 20 thou plastic is not the strongest of material. It's pretty flimsy. So I'll just take light cuts here. Trying to just get things round. A bit of guesswork involved here because I don't know how much I need to create the dome, but I'm going to strive for 2.06 inches for a diameter. This little live center is working well. Nothing's getting hot, and I've got as much pressure as I could put on with the tailstock lever. I've also left on the plastic, it's got a thin protective film. So you see that's sort of flapping around a bit, but the piece itself is starting to come together. It's difficult to measure how far the slot in the bezel, but by inserting something, noting how far it went in, and then having a look at that, all done through a loop against a caliper, I'm thinking that groove is about 25 thou deep. So the ID I measure on the bezel is 2.04. And then if I have 25 thou deep on two sides, that's another 50 thou, so 2.09. And then I'm going to add 20 thou to create the dome. So I should be 2.11. Yeah, that's about right. 2.108 is where I've ended up. My live center that performed admirably. Okay, at the bench I have got this Robur, R-O-B-U-R. It's a nice old watchmaker's tool that I find handy for working with the crystals. It basically presses the plastic into a dome shape. I'm going to wear gloves. Suppose I could put finger cots on, but I'm going to wear gloves just to keep the crystal clean. My hands are oily from being on the lathe. Here's what we've got for a crystal. So I peel this protective film off. We've got a nice clear round blank crystal. I'm going to slip the bezel in here before we start. Center the crystal. And tighten this guy down. To give you the visibility isn't super clear within the press, of course, but to give you a sense of what's going on, the bottom die is like so, and it's concave more than you'd ever need the crystal to be, so it really only contacts the crystal around the edge. And then the upper die has this felt on it, which presses the crystal down, domes it more than it will be in the resting position, so that the OD of it kind of shrinks in and will fit in that groove in the bezel. So let's see if we can make this happen here. You can kind of see the crystal forming up. If I put too much pressure on it, it'll kink. But I've got to keep going until there, that bezel snapped over it. Hopefully that's all in focus. The bezel's nicely snapped over the crystal. So when I release the pressure now, slowly and evenly, that crystal should expand outward into the slot. I can feel it. I can't pick the bezel up anymore. Looks like this is working fairly well. And there you have it, a brand new crystal for that indicator. Of course, you could do the same thing for a watch. Just looking at the amount of doming that I'm getting there, it's sort of hard to tell on the camera, but it looks pretty good. And I think that's gonna give this indicator, which is otherwise I've serviced and it works perfectly, I think it's going to give this indicator kind of a new life. So just to set the dial on there and see what we've got. I'll get that, put the hands back on, get that back together, do an extra careful clean on the crystal, and I think that's a win. Okay, so I've pressed the hand on. You always have to be very delicate with hands. I use a little watchmaker's tool here. It's basically got kind of a fairly hard rubber end that won't mar the hands, but lets you put a fair bit of force right where it needs to be. And then this outer dial here, that little notch there has to catch on a piece of plastic inside this dial. So basically, I'm going to put it on, make sure I catch it, and then fasten the dial down. Fasten the bezel down. The dial itself is not as clean as I would have liked. I used soap and water and also some Rodico, but wasn't able to get it any cleaner. And you're always sort of nervous, how aggressive do you go? Because if you go too aggressive, all of a sudden you mess up the printing on it. Set that there. I think that needle isn't pressed down enough. Seems very high to the top of the crystal. Yeah, applied a small bit of force to get that hand on ever so slightly more. I could pull out a staking set and do it that way, but I don't think it's necessary. I just was concerned that the hand was going to be slightly too high. Okay, so I saw the dial snap into place, and I can feel that the bottom dial snapped into place. And now we've got nice smooth action. What we do to reinstall this dial, line up these little holes. Continuing on putting this back together, one of the things that is a challenge to learn is how to work at different angles so the bloody camera can be in here. I just set myself back to the beginning on this. Okay, I've got everything lined up here. Now I need to hold this together while I rotate the bezel and identify or find, locate the holes in which these screws go. There we go. Okay, so let's have a look at the results here. We've got an indicator with a very clear new bezel. We've got an indicator where the bezel, can be moved to where we want it and stays put. And we've got a very smooth acting indicator. That's what, 1/4 of an inch tense indicator. Made in England. Batty, I guess you pronounce it, B-A-T-Y. But it's good to go. Thanks for tuning in. That's how to make a crystal for an indicator.